And when I'm thinking about, ideas of translation, I'm thinking a lot, like many of us are, about knowledge. What is knowledge? Who determines the value of knowledge? Once that value is determined, who then determines how it is disseminated and to whom it's disseminated? And for me, thinking of knowledge as, the way knowledge exists, I think it's the very nature of the word. It's a word I don't trust. The very nature of the word implies that it can be extracted. It can be consumed. It can be, again, made sense of, and it can be made to have value. Because we live in America, because the power of Western structures of democracy, of empire, of nation, government, all of these things, because they have created this system in which they decide, what knowledge is based on if they can take it, right? So, like indigenous bodies of knowledges, so we have like indigenous knowledge systems, things like that. They're so important to resist what is academic knowledge or these many centers of knowledge because they're knowledges that can't be taken. And they can't be taken because the people who try to extract them from the communities don't understand them.
One morning, in Hohokam land, the year 2020, a blast. 7 a.m., 5 yellow bulldozers rolled in, metal blades pushing sand and rocks. Behind the wheel of one of the bulldozers, a man, almost a boy, chewing blueberry chewing gum, drove up to the cusp of a hill and adjusted his hat, and just as he struck the saguaro, he received a text message from his girlfriend, not pregnant, see you tonight. He felt its resistance when he drove over it, but didn't see it falling, didn't hear it either, the more than 900 thorns in domino piercing the ground, 2 strabic arms snapping off the torso of the 6-ton green beast, hissing, crying,
the
breaking.
Sound of things falling, a world disappearing.
It's really not a hard job at all. Probably the most difficult part would probably trying to be keeping up with ammo production. I make the ammo. And I've got my helpers. William right over here helps me out. Just anybody on the cast can really do ammo as long as I train them properly. First part is probably making sure you got clean shells. We use 45 shells. And then you have to deprime them and prime them. Then you got to pack them with gunpowder and something called vermiculite. Vermiculite is just there to keep the powder inside the gun to make it boom. It's about $40 for a pound of primer, $5 for the vermiculite, huge bag of vermiculite. Your shells are probably your most expensive, probably about $1.50 a shot.
Remember when I asked you, why are the earth and sky always cloven asunder?
Always gold, Always what they wanted back in Spain was gold. Los cartógrafos dibujaron un contorno y lo llamaron el despoblado, the unpeopled. But the despoblado was full.
Back in the 1800s, when the Apaches were here, they controlled all of Arizona, New Mexico, part of Texas, and this was their land.
Hole. It's cone shaped, okay, and what they've done in the mining of it is they've started right at the top and they're starting to cone downward, and they're taking it in layers, and the layers were 50 feet apart, and as it's cut through different rock layers, so you get these vibrant colors, like kind of a purplish red, lavender colored, even though it's not named after lavender. You'll have these grays, reds, and greens, and in the bottom of it, you'll find these, during the rainy season, monsoons, the pools of water will turn bright green, almost black and green. But currently, I think all there is down there is these bright, dark, rusty red colored pools going to black.
The first time I saw an open-pit copper mine was in Bisbee, Arizona. It made me nauseous, dizzy, sick. The copper, the pit, the sick.
It's just like any place else in America. There is no different, there's nothing distinctive in that way. But if you look at it, the reality today, it's the blast zone. It's the after of 200 years of extreme colonization. This whole area was called the internal colony. He had studied under Anais Nin.
El cuenco de la mina es rojo y hondo, excavado en una serie de cortes abruptos, escalonados, como las antiguas terrazas de cultivo en las laderas de las montañas. Pero en vez de cultivos de cebada y trigo, el terraceado de la mina de cobre, arena, sobre roca, sobre arena, desciende en espiral yermo y se detiene súbitamente en un ojo de agua negra.
Rusty red colored pools going to black.
This is a story of the missing story. This is our voice, the voice that misses. These are our bodies. This, in our hand, is a wet, round rock.
These mines were burned in rock.
Hello, my name is Humberto Moro. I'm Deputy Director of Program here at the Art Foundation, and I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome you to the launch of Study One, Call You When I Get Home by Echoes from the Borderlands, a collective formed by Valeria Luiselli, Ricardo Giraldo, and Leo Heiblum. As you will experience today, Echoes from the Borderlands encompasses a range of meanings. It's not only a collective, but also a book, a sound exhibition, which we'll be previewing after this launch. But this project has taken many other forms as well, and we'll discuss this during today's conversation. Since its founding, DIA has engaged deeply with questions of land and landscape, what it means to inhabit a place. Over decades, artists have explored these themes through many exhibitions and our various DIA sites, such as the Lightning Field, the Earth Room by Walter de Maria, Sun Tunnels by Nancy Holt, and more recently, Depreciation and Plot by Cameron Rowland. Today, we continue this exploration with the work of Echoes from the Borderlands, presenting two new studies. Study 1, which we're here to launch today in the form of a book that you can acquire downstairs in our bookshop, and Study 2, which is the sound exhibition downstairs, which you will be able to view until March next year. I'm also joined today by the artist and by Kamilah Foreman, the co-curator of this project and DIA's director of publications. And before passing it to Kamilah, I'd like to thank Max Tannon and Kim Golding for making this event possible. Additionally, I'd like to thank our partners, the Institute for Studies on Latin American Art, ISLA, who have collaborated with us on a series of exhibitions and programs, including Echoes from the Borderlands. Please join us downstairs after this conversation to experience the exhibition, and thank you again for being here today. Kamilah.
Thank you, Humberto. So when we first started conversations with the artist in, I guess hard to believe, June of 2020, it's a little bit unimaginable to me that today DIA would actually be opening the exhibition and launching the book, Echoes from the Borderlands. For me, the book is really significant because, as Humberto just mentioned, it too is a concrete manifestation of this project and does form in and of itself one of the sound studies that's part of the larger overall project, Echoes from the Borderlands. So you'll hear momentarily what we mean by that from the artist directly, but when you buy the book, you can have exactly the same experience that you just had. You can read the libretto to the first half of Echoes from the Borderlands Study 1 while playing audio through a QR code that's printed in the book. And the artists have created a special version of that audio exclusively for this publication. Many voices, as you heard, appear in Echoes, but they have left one character or persona out. So in the book, that character is titled Reader, so that you, the reader, can read silently or aloud, however you prefer, and fully immerse yourself in the blend of soundscapes and perspectives about the border featured in Echoes. So now, Valeria will continue the part of Reader, so you can hear a little bit more from this title before the Q&A.
The mountain is not a place. The mountain is a practice. The earth is moving, right? It goes against, you understand? It's against the grain of the simplistic modalities of global positioning, right? That actually constitute the geographic foundations of settler colonialism. You can't settle the earth, motherfucker, because the earth is in motion. You can't settle the earth, motherfucker. What I say, we inhabit that movement, and that places an ethical responsibility on us. You don't stomp all over something when it's moving. You don't plant flags on it. Okay? You lightly step with it, in rhythm with it, in rhythm with it, right? You take up, you look with it, not at it. You move with it, in rhythm with it.
If they can take it, what knowledge is based on if they can take it.
The people who try to extract them don't understand them.
The mountain is not a place. The mountain is a practice. The mountain is not a place. The mountain is a practice. You can't settle the earth, motherfucker, because the earth is in motion, in rhythm with it, in rhythm with it, right? You can't settle the earth, motherfucker.
Under a full moon in the coldest month, around the year 1450 in Hohokam land, on a mountain, desert humidity levels rose above average, and the night was still. A splash of lichen, slow and small and yellow, on the surface of a red rock completed an expansion cycle. Next to that rock, a new saguaro pushed out of the ground, just enough to crack the crust of earth above it. The saguaro, some people believed, was a little girl who had disappeared into a hole in the ground.
Nobody has time to listen. Nobody listening? Nobody has time to listen.
All right, we're going to dive right in with probably the most controversial question of the night. Tell us how this project started and how did you meet?
We all have different origin stories of how this started and how we met. But one part that's not in dispute is that the collaboration with you guys started because I got the craziest call from Kamilah one day during COVID. It was already COVID. We were all losing our minds. And all of a sudden, my phone rings. No one calls ever just like that. And it was Kamilah, and she said, I'm working at the DIA now. And I thought, oh, great, I'm going to be asked to write something about an exhibition. And it's one of the most, boring genres for a fiction writer to write something about something descriptively that's, well, I've never known how to do that well. And of course she didn't, Kamilah being Kamilah, didn't at all ask me that. She said, so what are you working on? And I said, I'm trying to buy a town called Shakespeare. And she said, I'm interested. And that's how this conversation began. I'll let you guys tell your story because I know you're not in agreement with how we met. Or you're not in agreement with me and Leo ever. So why don't you tell your story?
No, I think that's an accurate way to put it.
No.
We've collaborated in many different forms. I know Leo since we were kids. Valeria I knew later in life. But the point is, when we got to this project, we were all engaged in sound, at least on the side of Leo and me. And getting these ideas of Valeria that she wanted to capture the echoes of places just in the border, just to try and capture the histories that have been left there resonating through years. And the idea was that we should go and try and capture those things. So it was a very challenging and interesting way to try and go there and get something out of the border. So I would say that.
Yeah, I think this is one of those projects that were meant to happen, because from many different sides, the impulse to make it, they were talking about doing some work like sound walks or some work like that, and without me knowing any of that, I'm working with, I have a project called the Encyclopedia Sonica, which I use sounds to make music. And I showed that to Laurie Anderson, and she was like, oh, I'm curating some concerts at Joe Pub, so why don't you present this, but I would like you to collaborate with a writer. So I contacted Valeria, and we had dinner at Odessa, which is now long gone. And I told her about my project, and she's like, oh, you're the character in my novel. And guess what? I have an idea for another project that we can do, and it was this border thing, and here we are 5 years later.
Do you agree, Ricardo? I agree with what he's saying. Yeah. Okay.
Now, we're just upstairs thinking about the history of this collaboration with Dia, which again is taking the form of this book and this exhibition. And I came to Dia 3 years ago, and I've been meeting with the artist and Kamilah and many other people in between for at least once a month, twice a month, sometimes more. And in my first meeting, I asked them, what is Echoes from the Borderland? And the answer to that actually came last week when we figured out how to present this series of studies. But as I was saying in my introduction, Echoes from the Borderlands is a very unstable, polymorphic concept that has taken many shapes, and that you guys have been sort of like understanding on the go as it's been constructed. So I want you to tell us what Echoes from the Borderland is for you, and maybe think a little bit about these formats that it has taken over time, like the developmental performances, which we have hosted one for our staff and our people close to Dia, so they could understand what the project was at the time, but also was close to your presentation at Joe Pubs, and then you did Harvard, and then you did Santa Fe. So there have been many experiences that obviously have informed and shaped the way of Echoes from the Borderlands. So maybe you can speak a little bit about that.
So originally, the impulse was to try to understand why the border that divides our two countries is such a fucking violent one, and why it's so difficult, and why it's so brutal. I'm a Mexican, now American. These guys come and go a lot between Mexico and the US, and we had that question, that discomfort, that pain. But also we made the mistake of turning that into a thesis. We thought this border is violent because maybe people are afraid, maybe people are angry. So we started the journey asking questions about fear, about anger, about violence. And we started realizing how we were missing out on so much, and we weren't properly listening to what people actually wanted to talk about. So 2 years, or maybe a year and a half into the recordings, Ricardo said, basta, this is not working. And I was like, yes, it's working. And he's like, no, it's not working. Okay, let's try something else. And one rule that we have between the three of us is, if one of us has an idea, no matter what, we say yes and we try it. So we tried another idea. We tried asking people about landscape. And that opened up a new door. It's not that we always ask that and that's the only thing, but it opened up a door to people talking about land and talking about beauty and talking about solitude and talking about their daily lives. And now the question has become not why is the border like this or like that, but the question is simply what do the borderlands sound like?
Yeah, and also when we started working, when we realized that if you drive across the border from one side to the other, it takes you 24 hours to drive. We're like, oh, so let's do a 24-hour sound piece. But of course, that's not so easy to do. So we realized that we're going to have to do many things to get there. And immediately we thought that we would have so many ways that this project could be presented. We thought, you know, short pieces. We thought maybe you can listen to it in the radio. Maybe you can do performances near the border. Maybe, like we thought of like 1,000 different ways. And we thought that was the strength of the project. But of course, when you try to explain someone, so what is Echoes from the Borderlands? And you start to say like all these things that you want to do. They're like, wait. But what is it, you know? And so then finally last week, we realized that all these things are studies that we are doing to understand the piece. And eventually, I think that the end piece is this 24-hour sound piece that can be presented in different ways, can be listened to it in the radio, can be listened to it in your house. We want to do 24 vinyls, like all, you know, all these different products. But yeah, so as Humberto says, we're finding out what it is on the go.
But I also think that the most interesting and important part of our meetings monthly or every 2 weeks was to get to that point, to start thinking of how we can transform this, how we can put a direction on it, how can we bring it to the ground and just not like, oh, I want to do 1,000 versions of something, but it's like what is important, how we can achieve that, and what is going to be the proper path in order to get there. So I think, and I also want to publicly thank you guys for the help and the guidance to find that, and also the openness to bring us that space for us to have these conversations, because that's the process for us. It's part, I think it's the most important part of the whole project.
Now, thinking about jumping into the void, I wanted to follow up a little bit about process before we dive into the book more specifically. But I'm thinking about, and I've been thinking about this notion for these past 3 years of fieldwork, right? Because fieldwork, in a way, has been a method and a material, and I would like for you to open that part up with our audience today in terms of what has changed. Because right in the beginning, you have this idea. There's a border. There's a time that it takes to navigate that border. There are all these histories of violence along the border for both countries and many other countries. But you know, being there and navigating that place, that kind of like phenomenological part of the work, I would love if you can speak about the field work, the work that you did there, your presence, also this kind of like approach of the human and the non-human, because there are parts that are mosquitoes or whales or sunset or oranges or cars, you know. So maybe you can speak about what it meant for you to be there, and kind of like the second part of that question would be what changed through the process of being there.
Just like immediately, I would like to say that very soon we realized that we had to let the place and the land tell us and work with us, instead of like going there with a specific idea that, oh, we want to like record about mines. Like, yeah, maybe, but once we are there, let's see what happens. Let's see who we meet. Let's see where we are, and let's listen. And of course, from my side, that was very clear from the beginning that it's a sound piece, and every sound is equally important. No? For me, this is where we complement each other very well. Like, I don't really care what people are saying. I just care like what the rhythm is when they're saying it. So maybe there's like something that's super cool rhythm, but there's something very stupid. But I'm like, no, but this rhythm, listen to the rhythm. And
I mean, I'll give you a good example of this. We were talking to a miner, like a mining guy, not a miner, and he was talking about drilling, passionately talking about drilling. And I mean, we came in the spirit of anti-extractivism. And then he passionately spoke about how to drill a mine, in a mine. And, you know, Ricardo and I found it interesting, but we were also like, shit, like, this is what we want in the piece. And Leo was like, listen, guys, it sounds amazing. Just listen to him talking. And he was right. Like, there's this way in which and that forced me and Ricardo, I think, to say, damn, this guy is truly the most passionate human being about mining and drilling holes. Like, I've never heard someone speak about drilling holes with this love and passion for it. Fuck it, he's in the piece, you know? And I mean, part that has repeated over and over, and part of what I want to say with this really is that we also embarked on this with the idea of recording what we thought of as missing stories, voices that were underrepresented, voices that were not heard. I was very angry after 4 years of traveling in the Borderlands a lot and talking to reenactors and talking to people in Arizona. I spent a year talking to vigilantes in New Mexico and Arizona. I was obsessed with buying this town, Shakespeare, New Mexico, where they do reenactments, they do rehearsals for reenactment. So if you arrive in Shakespeare, you can see lynchings and hangings being rehearsed. And I really wanted to buy that town back and do something better with that space. So I was really interested in those missing stories, not the same guys talking all over again. But the truth is that that's not what the border sounds like. The border sounds like that miner talking about mining and the reenactors talking about their ammunition, and Joey in the reservation Mescalero talking about nuclear testing against or with the people of Mescalero, and a woman that we ran into in the Tohono O'odham outside a church who describes a mountain. It's all of it, right? So we didn't think we would compose with so much, but partly led by Leo's sound, we have ended up including a much wider sonic presence of people.
Yeah, I would also say that in this process, what has changed? I think it has changed the way we listen to things. As Valeria said, we first got there with clear ideas of what we wanted to get from people, but suddenly that changed, and we said, like, let's let not only people but the place speak for itself. But then we had to do one extra mile, which was to take ourselves out of those conversations, meaning when you interview someone, you just have also to be absent of that conversation and at the same time being present, meaning you like try to erase your voice from that conversation, so it becomes a sort of like a tale, a history, a story, or I don't know, something that where you start taking a step back. And I think that's the part where we're starting to understand deeper how to take that step back and let the whole thing speak, sing, or sound, so we could capture better what it's out there and in the most truest forms possible.
I'm really glad you brought up the minor, and I want to kind of piggyback off of something you just said, Ricardo, which is, you know, stepping back to allow the sound and the presence of what's there come forward. But at the same time, you all have described this work as a sonic documentary fiction, right? So the minor section is in the section called Black Water, which is one of my favorites in the piece. And it isn't just that you hear the minor and, you know, loving or even erotic sort of detail talk about digging holes, but then you use that to transition into exploring ideas about reproductive rights, right? Like there are things that you're doing transforming what you're picking up in the various types of recordings that you do to then focus in on some of these deeper issues at the border as well. So with that long preface, would you like to talk briefly about sonic documentary fiction?
I mean, it started out as a sonic essay, right? And then we moved to sonic documentary fiction, partly to defend ourselves against Border Patrol, possibly saying he's very paranoid about Border Patrol.
No, I just knew that if we say that it's a documentary, we can use fair use. So whenever we're recording, we can say like, okay, we're using this recording because we have music all over it, and as film people know, if it's a documentary, you can say you can use it under the fair use. So I was like, if we say it's a documentary, we can do that, but we have to dive into that more because I'm not sure.
And fiction, because we thought, if we get accused that we were not allowed to use Border Patrol here, there, we can always say they're actors. So we just gave you the worst answer because I'm sure you wanted like a conceptual answer that, that would work in the art world. But for us, it's purely tactical. It's just like we need a strategy to not get busted and to continue working and continue recording.
No, and the truth is we have a lot of like all the border patrols. Like the truth is that they are doing their job and they're not being that mean to us. They're like, they sound mean, but they are just like asking us, where's the visa and how, what's your name?
You're just saying that because you think that there might be Border Patrol here. I know you.
On the record.
I actually really love how tactical you are. That's actually been kind of one of the fun things about working with you for the last 4.5 years. So let's maybe shift to the book as a tactic, because when we first met, there were 1,000 different possible realizations, and you all decided to, I'm really curious how you arrived at the book as a form of sound study.
Okay. When the possibility of doing this performance at Joe's Pub came out, we thought of having, that was Valeria's idea, to have 4 narratresses.
During COVID, and I had to use my family.
Right. So one of the things was like, what are we going to do? How are we going to signal them when they have to speak? Because it's going to last very long, and we have to know the rules of how to and when. And then we started working on this idea of how to do a translation for sound into words. But not only sounds like, oh, you hear, I don't know, it's just how you translate the sound of a mountain or certain moments or a bird or something that goes on beyond like words of other people telling us their stories. I mean, we had to find a way to signal those and to be able to read it. And then we suddenly discovered we had a lot of types of recordings. We had the nature recordings, we have the interviews, and then we had all the narratresses Valeria wrote. So we decided, let's do 3 columns, start splitting the whole thing there. And then we decided to complicate ourselves a bit more, and so we added sort of a slideshow to try and help people get like some lifesaver in case like 72 minutes of sound was far too much for them. So maybe they could just read the transcriptions, or maybe even drawing some lines where you have the border and signaling where are we in space and what are we recording at that specific time. And then we decided also to use other photos that we've been taking along the road, because we believed that it would be nice just to have the photo of the specific place we were recording at that moment, and that it became also part of the documentary process and part of this whole project. So at the end is basically our way to try and translate the sounds into a more, it's like an interface, it's like a way of relating to sound in a way. And one of the main things we grabbed was like 1 page is equivalent of a minute, like a script. So from that was our starting point. And then we started refining a bit the language of that in the 3 columns. And then we added different shades of color to signal different things. And then we arrived with this, which is like the script for the performance. And then you guys asked us like, hey, it'd be nice to have a book. And at the beginning we thought like, okay, let's make a completely different new thing. And then suddenly we said like, but we have already something that might be interesting, and that we've been working like for 4 years on this. So it might be worth it to try out. And that's the result that you might have in your hands.
Yeah, no, also I think that for us, sound is very powerful, and we want people to experience that power of sound. But people are not used to like just go and listen and that's it. They don't have anything to hang on to. So I think that we are trying to discover ways so that people can engage with sound and dive into the sound. And this is one of them, like to have a book and then you're following the book and then you can listen to all these things that are happening. Downstairs, it's a more like radical piece where, you know, you have 6 hours of sound from each state and you have no visual component. And you have some voices that are happening in the binaural headphones and a few happening in the quadraphonic. So we're trying and we're seeing how far can we go with sound, and how do we make it possible for people to engage and to experience the power of sound.
And in the book version in particular, I think what I find very, very beautiful, and what I'm hoping it really does for people when they're reading the book, is that it's not an audio book, and it's not a book alone either. It's a book in which one of the threads is you, the reader, if you want to, because you can also decide to skip that one and read others. You can read everything that there is on the page. If things are transcribed, if a bird is singing, we don't write beep beep beep, but we mark the speech of the bird or of whales, and you can sort of navigate the page at the same time as your mind navigates the sonic world of that entire piece of the Borderlands. This book in particular is also a result of our trying to understand how the hell the 24-hour piece might flow, might work. And when we started working on it, we only had 12, like the first 12 hours, meaning hundreds and hundreds of hours, but only of the first 3 states, California, Arizona, and New Mexico. So we thought, okay, we have half of the border. Why don't we stop here and make a kind of architectural model, a small-scale version, and compress for the first 12 hours, how many miles? I don't remember, the first 2,000-something miles, into an hour and a little bit. I never get the math. It's an hour.
72 minutes.
72 minutes. Into 72 minutes. And that's what we did. This is a kind of architectural, small-scale model, a 72-minute piece that would stretch out to be the first 12 hours. And along the pages, you see the borderland, the borderline, and you kind of can follow where you are, as well as there's very specific geographical markers of latitude, longitude.
Now, I want to be mindful about time, and just because we have to go down and experience the exhibition, it'd be great to clarify that this exhibition that you're going to see and hear here at the Chelsea has a very specific format, which, as Leo clarified, you can experience a state per day. So you'll experience 6 hours of a sonic piece from starting with California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. So you can come back to DIA and experience and have a completely different experience with a different state, which is also very DIA in a way. And you'll have more time to talk directly to the artist downstairs. And Kamilah, I don't know if you have any last notes before we go down?
Yeah, I'll add, you'll have more time to talk to the artist at the book signing, which will start immediately, so we will exit in just a second. I want to thank you so much for letting us work with you on this project. I also want to thank designer Laura Fields and editor Karen Rasabi, who put in an immense amount of work over the last few months to create the book. And I want to thank you all for coming, and we'll see you downstairs momentarily. Thank you.